Okay, and again, welcome to Lehigh University's full-time MBA program information session. I always like to begin with giving you kind of a overview of the university, and then we start to drill down into the program. Some of you in the region or on the East Coast of the United States may be very familiar with Lehigh. We may have some alumni on the call, or it could be your first experience with Lehigh. So I never want to assume that people kind of understand the university and kind of where it's positioned. So Lehigh University, we're consistently ranked as a top 50 US News and World Report national university, consistently in the top 50. One of the most important things when you're looking at an MBA program, in my opinion, is kind of the alumni network, both MBA and university network in general. Lehigh has 88,000 alumni that really form the core of our global network. I would say heavily focused on the East Coast or heavily centered on the East Coast. So think Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Washington, D.C. is kind of the epicenter, but also growing in areas like Chicago, London, San Francisco, Beijing. It really is a global network. And believe it or not, I always say, a lot of colleges and universities, there's a lot of rankings for certain things, and rankings are what they are. But Princeton Review actually has a ranking for the strength of alumni networks, and Lehigh is actually a top 20 alumni network for private universities. The reason I mention that is, you're all considering a full-time MBA for some reason, right? And a lot of times it's maybe you're not happy in your position, or you're looking to pivot into another area, or you just realize, you're kind of hit that ceiling where you need the advanced degree to kind of move on in your career. And, the challenge I think today with AI and applying to jobs is that we never recommend our students to do that, right? To just blindly apply to jobs on LinkedIn or other types of websites, that you really need to have some connection into the company, typically a referral into the company. So obviously that's something we teach in the program. That's where the strength of the alumni network, I think, really, really comes in, that many of our students, if not all of our MBA students, when they're applying to jobs, they're engaging with alumni at those particular companies before they're applying. That's a really, really important piece kind of moving forward in today's world. In addition, we are an AACSB accredited business school. What that means for you kind of as a consumer or potential student is that it's a high quality program. Technically, less than 6% of business schools globally hold the AACSB accreditation. So when companies look to hire, they typically would begin at AACSB accredited programs. It also, from a quality standpoint, we have to have certain percentages of full-time faculty and tenured faculty that teach in the program. So you're absolutely getting a quality education. In addition, while the MBA program definitely is not research-based, I think it's important to note that Lehigh is an R1 research university. It just puts the university in a different class of one of only 187 R1 universities within the United States. More again, from an MBA standpoint, from a global recognition and academic rigor standpoint, I think that is important to mention. And again, for those in the region here, you're likely familiar where Lehigh is located, but we do recruit globally for this program. So I always, again, never want to assume people have all the information about the university, but this is why many students are attracted to the program because of our strategic proximity to large metropolitan areas. So we're in a city of about 70,000 people, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We're in a region, the Lehigh Valley. It's the fastest growing region in Pennsylvania, just under 1 million people. But we have access to large metropolitan areas. Philadelphia is about 60 to 70 minutes away. New York City, 90 minutes. You can see Boston within a few hours and DC within a few hours. That's where many of our students will end up. The Lehigh Valley itself, it's actually and just came out, I think, yesterday again that we continue to be a top mid-sized market for economic development in the United States. So there's a lot of interesting companies here. Eli Lilly just announced the biggest economic development investment in the region and its history. That's probably a few years away at this point, but there are some really interesting companies within the region as well too. So when we work with students kind of on their customized job search, number one thing is we always kind of talk about regionality for your job search, right? Are you looking to stay within the region? Are you looking to go to certain cities? Are you looking to go anywhere? But there is a lot of activity within kind of our region. I will say many of our students will end up in historically in Philadelphia or New York City. But again, we have students in Washington, we have students in California, we have students international as well too. It really just depends on kind of our customized approach with you as far as where you're looking to go with your next step. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the full-time MBA program. So our full-time MBA at Lehigh, really for most students, is a one-year MBA program. It's a little bit uncommon that what you'll see is that many full-time programs are two-year programs, and then some may offer a one-year option, but it's not really a different program. They're just kind of picking some courses from their two-year program and they're calling it a one-year program. Where Lehigh has really doubled down and invested in the full-time MBA being a one-year program. So it is really an 11-month program where students begin typically in late June, early July, and then graduate in May. But we also realize for some students, I would say particularly international students, 11 months may be a little bit too quick. We also know some students may be interested in doing an MBA internship to help pivot to their next step. So we do offer flexibility that if students do want to stretch the full-time program out a little bit, you do have that option, and then extend to a December graduation. So you don't really have to make that decision on day one. I say most people come in with the path of this is a one-year program, but it does give our international students and somebody that really values an internship that flexibility. So I do like to mention that because what we see for our students is a lot of our students obviously they want the full-time MBA, but the realization of kind of being out of the workforce for 2 years is just a challenge for a lot of people. So again, I would say almost 80 to 85% of the full-time MBA students do the program in 1 year. And then there's kind of those special exceptions for people that spread the program out a little bit. A little bit more about the program. STEM designated for international students, I would say that matters. If you are looking to potentially explore work in the United States, the STEM OPT designation gives you 1 year of work eligibility in the United States, with up to 2 years of potential renewal for a total of 3 years. For US citizens, that obviously really doesn't matter. What I would say is the reason our program is STEM designated is that the overall curriculum has a little bit more of a business quantitative feel to it than other non-STEM MBA programs. And that's just really how Lehigh has positioned this program, making sure students have strong foundations in accounting and strong foundations in finance, as well as business statistics. But again, for an international student, that's if you are looking to work in the United States, finding a program that has a STEM designation is really always the place to begin. The full-time MBA is ranked by a number of ranking agencies as well too. We're ranked among the top 50 best business schools. That ranking actually just came out. That ranking is driven purely by the full-time MBA program. So Fortune's Best Business School and MBA rankings, I believe we're 46 in that. We also consistently ranked for the last few years in QS Global MBA rankings. We're also ranked for US News Best Business School, which is the full-time MBA ranking as well too. So the program definitely is consistently ranked across a number of different ranking agencies. You can see there in the picture, that's our business innovation building. This is where if you decide to come to Lehigh, you'd be spending a lot of your next year. We have two buildings, business buildings, the Roush Business Center and the Business Innovation Building. I will mention you don't actually see it in the picture, but on the second floor, we do have a business incubator in our building. So for students, both undergraduate and MBA students that are interested in exploring entrepreneurial opportunities, there's an incubator there where students can get accepted into the incubator. They can kind of build a business or test a business idea out, get a lot of coaching associated with it, and potentially get you connected to funding options as well too. So we're definitely seeing more and more MBA students that maybe they're not looking to be an entrepreneur as that next step, but at some point in their career, they're looking to explore it and they're leveraging different resources like the incubator in this building, as well as other entrepreneurial resources at the university. The program also has a number of concentrations. You don't really have to decide when you start the program. You really have probably about 2 semesters, really until you get to about halfway through the program to make that decision. Am I going to go down a particular concentration, or do I want to kind of just stick with general business, which is going to give me the broadest overview? If you stick with general business, you can see at the bottom of this slide, about 36% of your curriculum becomes elective credits. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility in picking and choosing courses that are interesting to you. I'll give you an example. Like we have a lot of students that are interested in AI and business analytics, and we offer courses in both. We offer a business analytics concentration. But you also are interested in courses like negotiation and mergers and acquisitions and things like that. General business still gives you a little bit of flexibility to kind of customize your degree. And for international students, this is new, but all of these are STEM designated now. So you don't have to just purely do business analytics or finance or supply chain management. You have a little bit more flexibility. Business analytics is our most popular concentration. It has been for about the last 6 years, followed by supply chain management, then finance, then marketing, if you're looking at kind of the concentration ranks. I want to show you real quick, and this is just on our website, but I'm going to take you to our website here quickly and just let it load here, just to kind of walk you through the year. I think it's important for you to kind of have a general idea of what this is going to look like. And thanks for those that were able to message me as well too, as far as your background goes. Super interesting backgrounds that I'm seeing. So the one MBA curriculum, what this really looks like is, again, it's a summer start. So we begin right around June 30th. We have a couple days of orientation. And then that rolls into about a 6 week summer start program. One thing I'm going to mention is by design, we are a small MBA. So we typically will bring in 15 to 30 students per year, and that is kind of your cohort of students. That when you're in your core classes, that's the group that you're with. When you're in your elective courses, you're going to see other students in those classes, particularly our part-time MBA students in some of those classes, or some of our other business master students that we have. The reason I mention that is when you're looking at MBA programs, I always say, a small program is not for everybody, but what we can offer you is a really high level of one-on-one service. You meet with a director level coach in our office who works with you on a specific one-on-one career strategy, who knows you, who knows your background, who could help get you connected into the Lehigh network. We also, from a networking standpoint, and I always mention this, is we leverage our part-time MBA program as well too. Our part-time MBA program, 100% of those students are employed at some really interesting companies. Think of Merck, think of Bank of America. There's some medical device companies that people may not be familiar with, payment processing companies, and I won't get into all of the names, but you can find that on the Flex MBA website. Our part-time MBA has been established for a long time, actually dating back into the 1950s. We have about 220 students enrolled in the part-time program. So the reason I mention that is for the students that really maximize the experience, they like the idea of being full-time and being in a small cohort together as a group, but then being able to access kind of the current student Lehigh MBA network more broadly, where you have these 220 students, in areas like New York City, Philadelphia, Lehigh Valley region as well too. But this cohort of students, you really go through the program together as a unit for all of your core classes. So you'll see in the summer, you take 7.5 credits. You have financial reporting for managers. You have MBA 440, which is kind of your business statistics class. And then you have kind of your management, organizational behavior, human resource classes. So kind of a blend of quantitative as well as management leadership courses in the summer. We start to also layer in some career and professional development, which I'll talk about shortly. The fall's the busiest time of the program. And the reason I say that is you've done a lot of your in those 6 weeks and even the beginning of the fall, you've done a lot of the career exploration side. You start to have a good sense of MBA type positions that are out there. You start to narrow your company list down. We have this very specific process that we follow for this. You're starting to kind of reach out to those companies. You may be applying to some of those companies. You may be interviewing at some point in the fall semester, depending on your timeline. So the fall semester definitely moves pretty quickly. And that's where students really, if you're organized from a time management standpoint, that is the biggest skill set to have in a full-time MBA program. So you can see in the fall, again, you have accounting, business analytics for decision making, financial analysis, supply chain. Again, a pretty quantitative overall core, just because we believe that's where students need to be positioned these days with courses like that. And then you have kind of your first taste of electives. So even if you choose a concentration, you do get at least one free course to explore or 3 credits to explore. And you'd be able to pick from a lot of different disciplines in taking that particular class. That wraps up usually early December, early to mid-December for the fall semester. You have about 2.5 to 3 weeks off. That's the longest break in the program. And then you roll into our 3 week intersession, winter intersession, where you would have customer insights and marketing, 3 credits, really over about 3 weeks. So it is very condensed. You'll be in class a lot during that time. The students have done projects in the past, they've worked with companies in the past. It really just kind of depends on how the professor runs a particular class, but you get kind of your marketing core class in the winter. And then in the spring semester, you can see it really opens up. You have economics, you have a strategy class, a really important class for the full-time MBA students. And then again, you have a lot of space with your elective credits. So again, if you're doing a concentration, this is where it gets very personalized and you're, taking potentially all of those classes in business analytics or marketing. Or you do general business and you have that flexibility to kind of choose things. And then I will mention if somebody is going to be extending their program and not graduating in spring, we're just moving some of those spring courses. We're keeping you full time, and then we're moving those into the fall 2027 semester. And there's a way that we can still certify you as a full-time student in your final semester, even if you aren't taking a full-time credit load. So what that does then is it opens that summer up. And the reason we do that, rather than just kind of ending on a summer internship and having you graduate in the summer, is that for many MBA level internships, the companies want to see you return back for a semester to line up with their hiring cycle. So Amazon's a really good example. I've worked with a number of students who have landed in Seattle at Amazon headquarters, and either through internships or through direct full-time positions. And Amazon, if you would Google a Amazon MBA internship and you read kind of the fine print at the bottom, it will say like to be considered for this internship, you must be graduating in December 27, May 28, or August 28. Um, Very specific timelines as far as for MBA searches to line up with their particular hiring cycle. So again, like I said at the beginning, 85% of our full-time MBA students finish the program in 1 year. But for students that may be having that conversation in their head about, do I do a 1 year with no internship or do I do kind of the full 2 year program with an internship? Personally, I think this program is kind of the best of both worlds, and it gives you that flexibility as you're going through the program. Okay, so let me jump back here. So again, some differentiators that I've talked about today. The 1 year program is definitely unique, and what I'll tell you is that there are other 1 year programs out there, but many of those programs are what are considered like 4+1 MBA programs. Accepting a cohort of students without work experience. And that's just not where Lehigh is. That the average student in this program has a minimum, typically a minimum of 2 years, obviously, but average about 5 to 6 years experience. We've had students with 20 years experience come back and do this program, or 25 years. But the sweet spot is about 5 to 6 years professional experience. There may be one or two students that are very early career in the program, but highly capable. But that is the difference where compared to some of our peer schools, it's more just a +1 program. And it's important for us that you're learning from others in your cohort. And we think having obviously that level of work experience is an important component. In the 1 year space, I think that definitely makes us unique, requiring the work experience. Obviously, the flexibility, which we've talked about in time to completion and graduation date, and then the STEM designation kind of across all of the programs. And again, more of a quantitative feel to the program. It just positions you better post-graduation. And I touched on it briefly. This is something that I think is probably, I don't want to say equally important to the curriculum, but honestly, it probably is equally important. It's kind of that career structure. We follow what's called a co-curriculum. And what that means is that while you're doing kind of the academic side of the house, your credit-bearing classes, we're also running you through our career co-curriculum, which is really a structured career format specifically for MBA students. It's, in our opinion, it gives you the tools what you need to move from where you are today to where you want to be. We call it Next You, because that's really why you're here for the program, right? You're here to develop yourself. You're here for the next version of yourself in your professional career. So we actually start this before students arrive. We have you start doing some of the legwork, doing a little bit of research, doing some assessments that we purchase for you related to kind of your career strengths, your personality strengths. We then start to fold that into industry and company research, where you start to narrow down. We start with a list of 40 companies. 40 companies that, for a number of different reasons, you have selected as a potential fit for the program. And then we start to kind of cross build that list, and we start to find Lehigh alumni within that network and particular positions within that network. And for international students, do these companies have a track record of hiring international students? So when you actually arrive to Lehigh, that's not a finalized list, but you've started a lot of that legwork, a couple hours per week as you're getting ready to ramp up the MBA program. We find that that actually works really, really well in a 1 year program, that you just hit the ground running a lot quicker, because time is your biggest asset in the program. So the Next You career curriculum is, in my opinion, it's very well designed. It's very structured but flexible, to realize that every MBA student might need a little more time to figure things out. Like if you're coming from a non-business background, you might not, until you get into some of your classes, you might not fully understand, wow, I really like supply chain. And that's okay. It gives you that flexibility. But we focus heavily on developing you, developing your professional stories, taking those professional stories and kind of helping you build them into particular formats that are going to only help you in the job search process. We do things like case interview workshops. We bring in one of the top case interview, it's almost like a boot camp. It's like a couple hours where this company will come in, and if you're interested in consulting, or honestly, we see case interviews in other areas of business. It's going to give you the framework for how to handle a case interview, or a market sizing question. I always use this example and then I'll move on. But we had one student who was in a case interview for an e-commerce company. It wasn't Amazon, but think of a top five e-commerce company in the United States. And they got a market sizing question just to see how they think and how they process things. And the question was during their case interview was tell me the market size of coffee drinkers in California or in San Francisco specifically. Now, the reality is no one's going to know that off the top of their head, right? But it's more the process and the structure that somebody follows to get to that answer. So in like a market sizing or case interview question, it's you're talking it through to them. They want to see how you think. So that can be kind of stressful, I think, if people aren't prepared for those types of things. So having a case interview workshop in the fall semester is incredibly helpful. Again, to give you some of those frameworks to begin to practice your case interviews on. We do a ton of one-on-one coaching. We also do some small group coaching as well too. I think that's very helpful to learn from your peers in a small group setting around a particular theme. But a lot, very heavy one-on-one coaching with our career coaches. We do networking events, obviously. We'll tend to try to do between 4 and 6 what we call career treks. So that could be a visit to JP Morgan in New York City, or a visit to a company in Philadelphia, or a regional visit, just to get some exposure. There's some networking opportunities there. There's learning about particular companies. It can be a really helpful, I think, exercise and experience from a networking standpoint. So we'll do things like that. And then the university itself has a lot of different networking opportunities. If you're interested in finance, for example, we have a very active Wall Street Council in New York City that will have a couple networking events throughout the years. If you're interested in supply chain management, we have a Center for Supply Chain Research on our campus that has 2 to 3 events per year that attract 200 people to, and a lot of interesting companies around logistics and supply chain will attend those. There's a women's conference, there's engineer conferences, a lot of different things happening at a university level for students to engage in from a networking standpoint. And then we also have a second, this is new this year, a second co-curriculum again. So think of this as something that's really not graded, is happening kind of concurrently while you're going through the MBA program, is we have a couple sessions, kind of live sessions on AI fluency. AI, obviously, everyone's talking about it. It's integrated into many of our lives. It's not going away. And we fully believe as a university, we've embraced this. And at a program level, our kind of goal is that everyone is graduating with a certain level of AI fluency when they graduate the MBA program. So you're going to see a lot of AI within the curriculum, right? The teachers are integrating that, or the professors are integrating that into their courses. But we also want to make sure that students have a baseline when they come out of the program. So it's practical, right? It's designed to build practical, ethical, and strategic AI skills. It's very modular, so we'll offer these particular sessions. It'll probably be 3 to 4 sessions throughout your time here at Lehigh. No prerequisites. It's there to just kind of get you upskilled in AI. Our leadership, my boss, who's the Associate Dean of Graduate Studies, he is kind of the designated AI person within the College of Business. So it's very important to him, to me as well too, that students are obviously fully upskilled in AI readiness. So let's talk a little bit about the outcomes. This is the most recent data that the university has provided to us, just so you're aware. Preliminary data for last year's class is very similar, it might be a little bit higher starting salary, but within this range is what I can kind of tell you at this point. You can see that our starting salary, around $110,000. Kind of the max salary that we saw last year for a couple students was $175,000. Really proud that almost 90% of students were employed, continuing their education, or military service. We have to report it that way. None of the students in last year's cohort were continuing their education, volunteering, or military service. 88% of those students found jobs within 90 days of graduation, and that's how MBA programs report. You can see in different areas like technology, consulting, financial services, and retail. I mention that because it's broad on purpose. We're not a machine where we're just everyone's going into consulting or everybody's going into finance. It really is a personalized experience where you can kind of take it multiple directions. Maybe it's entrepreneurship, right? It's really your path, and we'll work with you on that. We tend to see students in operations, consulting, general management. Those are all common functions within typical types of firms. And you can see we have a larger list on our website, but companies like Amazon, BNP Paribas, Cognizant, GitLab, Goldman, PwC. These are just some of the recent ones off the top of my head. But also some companies you probably haven't heard of as well too that are doing some really interesting work. Ramp is one that a couple of years ago people didn't really know about, and I think they were running ads now during the Super Bowl as a fintech company. So again, there's a bigger list on our website, obviously, but we have had students land at some obviously top tier firms out of this particular program. And as far as kind of the application, kind of the practical side of this, if you are interested in moving forward, number one, for being here today, I've kind of documented your names and thank you for being here live. We'll be happy to waive your application fee if you do decide to apply to the program. Where we are from a timing standpoint now is our round three deadline is on April 1st. If you are an international student outside of the United States and will be on an F1 visa, our application, that is kind of, I would apply as soon as you can, just because there are some delays right now in certain countries for getting a visa interview. But if you are here in the United States, obviously we'd always encourage you to apply early, but you really have until May 1st as the final application deadline for the program. I'd encourage people to apply earlier than that just because the timeline between like if you submit your application on May 1st, it usually takes 2 to 3 weeks once your application's complete to render an admission decision. It gets a little bit tight. And again, if we have you doing a little bit of pre-work before you get here, that can be a busy time as you're transitioning out of your job as well too. So this is for us is now is kind of the busier time, typically from March until May 1st. The application's pretty straightforward. I believe let me see if we have it here. And yeah, we have it on the next slide here. We do have scholarships available. So for competitive candidates, we definitely can award, I think, pretty sizable scholarships for you, depending on your academic and your professional backgrounds. This gets decided at the time of admission. So if you are offered admission, there's a likelihood that you would be offered some level of scholarship at that time, and you have all that information at once. I usually follow up and we'll set up a one-on-one then just to talk through the program and talk through the offer in a little bit more detail. If there's any veterans, we are a yellow ribbon program. So a lot of our military that are transitioning out to veteran status, yellow ribbon is a really nice benefit. And we are a yellow ribbon at 100% if there's any veterans here or watching this. And again, the application itself is pretty straightforward. A personal statement, which is a kind of a 1 to 2 page essay, kind of why you're looking to do the MBA. It's kind of a introduction to yourself to the admission committee. We ask for an updated resume that really kind of lays out your work experience and your responsibilities. Unofficial transcripts are fine for an admission decision. So let's say you went to Rutgers and then you transferred to Temple, for example, list it out that way. So we can see any school post high school that you've attended, just kind of list them there. And then we would need transcripts from each of those schools. Again, if you have them, they're considered unofficial and you can just upload them. And if you are admitted to the program, we would give you like 60 days to get us the official transcripts. 2 letters of recommendations or LORs, LORS. The way that the recommendations work, we typically would like to see supervisors. They can be former supervisors if you're working and you don't want to let your company know. But it's typically 2 letters of recommendation where you will put their name and email address into the application. And when you save that page, an email will go out automatically to them behind the scenes. It'll ask them to upload a letter, rank you in a number of different areas against your peers. So I always recommend when you save that page, just kind of send the recommender an email and say, hey, you should have gotten like an automated email from Lehigh because it does sometimes get caught in like spam folders. You'll be able to track this in your application. You'll see it'll go to received, from required to received when we actually have the record of that. And you can also send reminders to the people as well too, if they haven't submitted them to you. But those are helpful for us just to kind of understand, your professional background and what your former supervisors would say about you. We are GMAT, GRE optional. I'll be very clear. Like most students, I would say 9 out of 10 students apply without a GMAT or a GRE. So this is not super common to take one. So don't let that dissuade you. I would say the students that need a GMAT or GRE, number one would be maybe somebody that has a suboptimal GPA. Doesn't mean they can't do well in the program, but for whatever reason during their undergrad they had some academic challenges. And I use that the measure is kind of like let's start at a 3.0, right? Like our average GPA is about a 3.3 in this program. If you're below a 3.0, you probably want to have a conversation with me and give me a little bit more details. If it was in some mechanical engineering, for example, or quantitative finance or something, there may be a little bit more leeway there. But we should have a conversation for anybody kind of below a 3.0, and I can advise you more appropriately. The other person I would say is somebody that maybe did well academically in their undergrad, but for whatever reason, it's just based on choice, right? They picked a major where they didn't have a lot of math or really any math or quant. So I pick on myself here. So I was a psychology and human resource major for undergrad. So I had business classes. I didn't have a lot of statistics. I don't even know if I had any statistics in my undergrad. I didn't have accounting. You don't necessarily need those before you come into the MBA. But what I'm trying to say is if we don't have any evidence of quantitative ability on a transcript, that can be a little bit of a challenge to make an admission decision. So I can always talk to people one-on-one about this if that's helpful. But as long as you've had like a couple quantitative classes, you're above a 3.0 GPA, it'd be very uncommon, I would say, to have a GMAT or GRE. So hopefully that generally helps give people a little bit of direction. For international students, we do, for certain countries, require English proficiency. I would encourage you to Google that. We have a pretty laid out set of information on our website that includes if you studied in certain countries, if you've worked in the United States, but you studied internationally in a non-English speaking country, you may be exempt. But every student has to meet English proficiency. So we have directions on our website for international students of how to kind of evaluate that. And then we do interview a lot of candidates for this program. So once you submit your application, as you're moving towards application completion, I will typically reach out and set a one-on-one Zoom call up with you. Usually 20 to 25 minutes, will be recorded because it's for the admission committee. And it really is just helping personalize your application. Why are you looking at an MBA? Walk me through your professional background. Let's walk through each job and learn a little bit more about your experience, general ideas of maybe where you see your career future. Those are really the things that we tend to we tend to ask about. And then obviously, if you get admitted and everything works out and you decide to come to Lehigh, you would accept your offer and you'd make $1,000 enrollment deposit. And then that's where everything starts moving at that point. We'll onboard you. All of your information starts to flow to other parts of the college, like financial aid office, for example. So that's kind of the process, kind of walking you through the application. For those that are here live, again, we'll waive the application fee. Really, all you need to do is you begin the work on your application, and then when you're ready to submit it, before you submit, just email me. I'll give you my email address here in a moment, and just say, "Hey, I'm ready to submit the application," and then I'll go in and take care of it for you to make sure we waive the application fee as a thank you for being here live. And that's kind of the end of the presentation. So kind of right on time here. I know in the live candidates here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording. So for those that are watching this on recording, you're always welcome to email me at kje318 at lehigh.edu. For those that are here in the meeting, I'm just going to drop my email address in the chat again, kje318 at lehigh.edu. You'll all get an email from me too, probably in the next few hours with a obviously this recording, and then my calendar invite link if you'd like to set up a one-on-one. But I'm going to stop the recording here and then see if there's any questions from our live candidates. So for those that are here live, please feel free if you have any questions to type them in. And if you don't, look forward to hopefully meeting you one-on-one as a possible next step. Thank you.